you never bother me. I feel happy and fine. I don't know which way is up. I'm on the verge of losing it, okay? Living in the sunlight, loving in the moonlight, having a wonderful time. You gotta be kidding me!
Welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Sid Vicious, and today we're talking about work and how we're all products of the meat grinder. Work is something we all experience in some way or fashion. Either you're making money the legitimate way, the illegitimate way, or your own way. All are ways of making money, and all are considered work, jobs regardless. Work has a tendency to dominating our lives. It overtakes your schedule, it overtakes your ability to travel, it overtakes your time off, and it legitimately pays your bills. It also tends to become some people's identity, how they request their time off, how they spend their time, and more importantly, how they spend their money. And we've all been subject to the toxic environment work can cause for us. Whether it's the demand a job has on you, or your availability and how ready you need to be by your phone, or even the toxicity of our coworkers, sometimes they could be the worst. But in today's video, I plan on trying to break down these little stigmas within the working relationship, the workplace, and our relationship with it. And as always, guys, thank you for coming through. Really appreciate it. Drop your boy a like, hit the share button, send it to a couple people. You won't believe how much that helps. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you. So first on our agenda today, we have a fun little word I learned myself researching this, presenteeism, and that whole never missing a day of work flex people have. Presenteeism is defined as showing up to work and not being at your full function, whether it's due to illness or injury. And we all know these people. People show up to work sick as a dog, and they all have their various reasons. Some people can't miss a day of work to put food on the table. Some people can't miss a day of work because they can't stand being at home. Some people can't miss a day of work because it might even cost them their jobs. However, we also know the people who hold it like a badge of honor, bragging of stuff like, I haven't missed a day of work in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years even. It can really come off sometimes as this person's not taking his best care of themselves, or nor do they care about the people in their surroundings. This is partially due to the workplace environment and ourselves being held accountable. A lot of jobs nowadays have sick time. However, some jobs have weird systems where you can build up sick time and earn sick time on a week to month basis. However, for some parents, that doesn't account for their children's sick time and the time they need to be home taking care of the children. Not to mention the social pressure that comes with missing a day of work. How your coworkers could scrutinize you and you can be seen as weak or lesser than. Some people might just keep showing up to work because they feel like the job can't do it without them. However, there's research that proves the counterpoint to this. Research going back decades shows presenteeism cuts productivity and worsens burnout. Presenteeism is costing firms billions because sick, exhausted people are less productive and spread sickness. But it's also these companies that have programs rewarding people for never missing a day, creating an environment where people underreport illnesses. People will be sick as a dog and not calling to work. People will be vomiting, coughing all over the place and not calling for work. I'll be honest, I've worked next to those people. I've been that person, and it is not something you want to be around. Companies that reward never missing a day create an environment where people underreport illnesses. We get presenteeism, higher turnover rates, and workers who actually are never fully rested. This results in longer term absences, worse morale overall, and reputation damage when the public sees how these people are coming to work. So that big flex of people being like, oh, I haven't missed a day in 27 years. It really is coming off as like a lack of taking care of yourself, a lack of self-worth, reheated sadness. So that big trophy people hold of never missing a day shouldn't really be seen as a trophy as much as a warning signal. But people do tend to take these trophies and hold them over people and brag about them. Bragging so much that work might even end up becoming a whole identity. Let's talk about people and when work becomes their whole identity. Some people don't have a job, they are their job. And with so many people out there applying with open availability, it's very easy to be sucked into this role. We all know this person too. A conversation immediately ends with them the moment they stop talking about work. It's a sad depiction of how the times really are and how people don't even have time for their own personal hobbies and to expand upon their identity of self because they're too busy dedicating every moment they have to work. But why does this happen? Why does this whole identity fusion between person and job happen? Identity fusion happens when social cues, constant Slack updates, side projects, and employer storytelling collapses into one thing: your job, which is great for companies, but a slow erasure on your personal life. You know, and this whole thing starts with like one company CEO deciding to really tell his personal story and really get into it and start having standards of how people should be behaving on a regular basis, really trying to meticulously control people's behavior by coding it as this is just how we are around here. I'm not too ashamed to admit that this has happened to me. I once worked at a restaurant where I lived and breathed that restaurant, and it was like all I really did. There's many times I missed out on birthday parties, holidays, hangouts with friends, and anything else you could think of just because I had to work. And I loved what I did. I really did. However, it took over a huge part of me, and it made me unbearable to talk to when it came to anything outside of work. For example, startups that require founder stories at onboarding and year-round hackathon participation often reward people who make the job their social life. That looks like camaraderie, but gatekeeps outsiders who want boundaries. This becomes toxic when people start defining partners, hobbies, even politics by job roles. The absolute worst is when leaving a job is treated like an utter betrayal to the person and taken far too personally. And they could really end up hurting your career, because if you end up staying in the same field, that person is bound to know someone else at the next place you're about to work. And when it really gets down to the nitty-gritty of all the mandatory fun time and the connections you made through the job and all that, you start peeling back the layers and really noticing how cult-like some of these jobs can be. Which brings us right into onboarding, rituals, and mandatory fun. A lot of jobs nowadays like to have these big ceremonies and onboarding rituals and all this stuff for new employees, which I don't want to harp on too much because I think that stuff's important. Making people feel welcomed and accepted at their new position is super valuable, and you'll get a way better employee out of it. However, there are many places that tend to take this a little too far. I myself worked at a place that had all this going for it. They had classes for no matter what department you were working in, and even a website to help you make friends outside of the job. However, some of the people leading these groups and leading these classes did tend to be drinking the Kool-Aid, fully on board with the whole vibe, preaching the workers' handbook like it's the gospel, and having such a positive attitude that you would have believed you were at Disney World if you didn't know otherwise. These group activities and rituals aren't always a bad thing. However, mixing that ritualistic property with the pressure to be joining and the social costs of not participating, it really starts sounding like you're either shitting or getting off the pot. Researchers and cultural designers flag several patterns: intense onboarding that prizes total buy-in, values taught and enforced like testaments, social penalties for not participating, and constant alignment meetings, making sure everyone's on the same page. Companies want cohesion. However, the line between cohesion and coercion is very thin. I mean, I've never been on one personally, but there's many companies that have the whole getaway weekends and, points awarded for participation. I mean, being on the other side of it too, if you're not abiding by most of this stuff, you're seen as someone who's not a good fit or not being a team player, which these are all weird words for saying you're not doing exactly what we want you to be doing. At some of these places, not abiding by what they're asking or not participating, you're seen as someone who's fallen into descent from the graces of their gods. If you're anything like me, you're not sipping the Kool-Aid. And on the counterpart of that, the people who are guzzling the Kool-Aid are seen as angels in their own right. These things tend to lead to favoritism, which brings us to our next point: favoritism, nepotism, and the slow descent to scandals. In all of our lives, we're bound to be shown favoritism in one way or another. Favoritism is a very natural thing to happen. We all find things in each other that we find relatable, and sometimes we don't. Favoritism, as natural as it occurs, can be very harmful in the work environment. Studies show it damages morale, it stresses out employees, and it leads to higher turnover rates. But where does favoritism and nepotism rear its ugly little head, you may ask? Favoritism shows up in promotions, project assignments, and who gets to stay remote decisions. When favoritism goes unchecked, it can snowball into cover-ups and bigger scandals. We've all seen it. You know what I'm talking about. When that shit blows up. But for real, there have been many reported incidents where a manager shows favoritism to an employee and then a scandal on the relationship nature starts. And that could tear a whole restaurant specifically into pieces, speaking from experience. There was this guy I worked with. I looked up to him quite a bit. He was a very suave guy. But at the time, I was just like, man, he's such a good manager. He's such a good manager. All the pretty girls at work really showed their appreciation to him. It wasn't just managing he was really good at. And there's even other types of scandals this leads to, especially nepotism. So many people have been called out and whistleblowed on for hiring their second cousin's uncle to do whatever the hell. And And although that may seem like the right thing, family helping family, it can really hurt the reputation of a company for showing favoritism and nepotism over hiring people who deserve an equal chance. One investigative reporter repeatedly ties scandals to crony networks inside companies, and the pattern is the same. It often happens where they protect the insiders, punish the whistleblowers, paperwork that doesn't add up, and a whole lot of unanswered questions. But favoritism can lead to promotions. You can really get ahead in life through favoritism as much as it also can hurt other people. Favoritism can even lead to a management role. However, not all management is all wielding power. So let's go ahead and start talking about the 10th ring of hell, middle management.
This is fine. I'm okay with the events that are unfolding currently.
Middle management's another one close and dear to my heart. Special place where you can get from the front and the back. Working in middle management is the definition of working between a rock and a hard place. Not only are you dealing with the people underneath you, trying to make sure they fall in line and report to their duties on time and in a way that is productive, you're also getting rained down from the people on top of you who are holding you accountable for those people's mistakes and lack of support. Data shows that manager reports very high stress level and over 50% burnout rates. They carry accountability without authority, manage both up and down, and often receive less training than either roles. Middle management is a very bittersweet position to hold. You're in a position to really help change and grow people in their career, in their path, whatever skill you're learning or teaching. You're also in the position to put all that work into them to then have to let them go and then told to keep morale up anyway. And a lot of people in this position are looking for a way out, and it's not the traditional way. From personal experience, middle management is a very hard spot to hold. You have a lot of responsibilities coming from both ways in your employment, and when you get to that breaking point, it can make or break the entire company. If you decide to quit, you leave a huge gap that needs to be filled, and 9 times out of 10, they don't have an immediate replacement for you. However, if you choose to stay, you're usually only rewarded with the efforts you put into the individuals you work with. This has led to a lot of people in middle management deciding to pursue other avenues of work and also quiet quit. And can you blame them? With some of these jobs, nowadays people starting at the same rate people have been there for 10 years are making, or the gaps between the 10-year and the newbies being so wide. Which brings us to our next category, tenure versus new hires, pay, privilege, and the rift. Long tenure employees often have a pay advantage, intuition knowledge, and political network. New hires are frequently asked to do more for less money while being judged against the legacy standards. You know, you get in there, you do your best, you're just working your ass off trying to make a name for yourself, while the people who've been there for 10 years kick back and look at you like you're already doing something wrong. And yeah, as I prior remarked, there's these situations where people are coming into jobs making as much as the person who's been there for 5 years, but there's 100% the other way around where people are coming in and 5 years later still not making the money of the person who started 5 years before them. And companies have their own very creative ways of getting around all this. Companies that freeze raises to control the cost end up with a stale pay bands. Newer employees see less upward mobility and drift to the other employees, which increases turnover and tends to put a squeeze on middle management. This tends to backfire on a lot of companies, with newer employees getting resentment or older employees, depending on the scenario. People trying to play the system and really work their favoritism angles. A lot of these jobs are losing people that are very talented, and this could have been easily fixed with pay transparency and promotion criteria. This tends to leave a lot of people feeling powerless, like there's nothing they can do to fight back against some of these policies. However, due to something not too long ago, people started realizing that they have the power more than the companies do. COVID showed millions of companies that they could survive remote work. Suddenly, the power shifted. Employees realized they had options. The realization led to more bargaining power for workers, a push for flexibility, and a movement like quiet quitting, essentially boundary setting disguised as doing only your job. There's countless examples of, due to the pandemic, people realizing how unhappy they were in their jobs and careers and switching paths. It also made a lot of us realize how much our employers need us vastly more than we need them, and how it's ridiculous to accept anything less than something that's going to make us happy or pay our bills. Speaking about paying bills, let's talk about some people who suffer from something far too common, the golden handcuffs. High salaries can look like freedom until they're not. Many people tie raises and bonuses to their lifestyle creeps. Things like buying a house, buying a car, or even paying off loans. They'll plan on a certain amount of money coming in to do certain things. When the job becomes unbearable, leaving feels impossible when your bills demand a certain salary a year. But suddenly the cost of living is matching the number on your paycheck weekly. That makes it really hard to grow your savings and feel any sort of financial safety net. But what happens when that job becomes unbearable? You can't stand being there and you want to move on to something else. That's when leaving feels impossible and you start feeling the weight of the golden handcuffs. When your bills are demanding a certain level of income, it can make it really hard to find another job that meets that standard of income, which then has people feeling locked in the industry, whether it's in that position with that company or finding a similar position with a similar annual salary. You feel locked in this position even though you might want to take a new creative choice on your own life, creating this vicious cycle of you just showing up to your job because you have to. There's definitely people out there bragging about high-paying jobs, but have secretly become prisoners of their own lifestyle. I know at first it may sound like, ooh, look at me, I'm stuck at my high-paying job because I have all these fancy things, but it's a real thing. It's something that could really take a mental toll on a person and have them feeling like they're on a never-ending loop. And those feelings, they have a lot of weight to them. They could drag into a lot of other aspects of your life, bringing us to our next topic, the emotional baggage of our jobs.
I want it to end. I want it to end.
Work has a weird way of not just being our 9 to 5 or 8 hours a day. It has this really awful tendency to seep into our everyday lives, affecting our relationships with our family, our friends, and even our hobbies. There's nothing worse than having a full planned out weekend and Sunday rolls around and you're having nothing but nerves in your belly because you have to show up to work tomorrow. And this is all too common of a phenomenon. The constant pressure, especially in our society, to be doing more and working hard makes you feel inadequate or lesser than when you're not working. Not to mention if you have bad coworkers or a bad employer or any of the job itself is affecting you. This all can add up really quickly, leading to depression and anxiety. Side comment, this next part is something I really want people to listen to and understand, and another good reason to share my video. If workplaces and people try just a little harder to respect one another, with better communication, more empathy, healthier boundaries, work wouldn't have to feel like such a punishment. Work's always gonna suck, but we could do our part to make sure the person next to us and ourselves aren't having such a bad day. Work is demanding. It is something we all need to do to survive, but it doesn't need to be our whole mood and personality 24/7. We talked about a lot in this video today. We talked about the people who don't shut up about their job. We talked about how people were taking power back. We talked about presenteeism. We talked about favoritism. We talked about middle management, tenure gap, and we talked about how COVID shifted a lot for a lot of people and how our jobs can really have a lot of emotional baggage on us. So what do we do? How do we fix it? What can we do to try to help set a better future for ourselves? My first recommendation would be tracking your energy input and output instead of your hours, meaning making sure you're only pouring into things that you feel are pouring into you. And if that's not your job, there is 100% a job out there that will make you feel that way. Number 2 would be use your sick days. They're there for a reason. None of us at the job want to get sick. The world's not going to stop if you just take care of yourself. If you're one of those people who have to make it to work every day just to pay bills and put food on the table, I 100% get it. I didn't grow up too fortunate myself, and I've had to do the same thing. However, if you can take a day to take care of yourself, it's highly recommended. If you're working at a bigger conglomerate company, push for transparent pay. This helps out everyone. People coming in the door, people who've been in the door for 10 years. This just makes it really easy for people to understand each other and not feel any type of way about other people's pay. If you're in middle management and you're getting really freaked out from all the stuff I said, push for more training, making sure you understand your role, the people around you understand your role, and you're being supported and taken seriously on anything you deem fit. And my last tip, probably the most important tip, make sure you're building a well-rounded life outside of work, no matter who you are. That could be reading books you like to read, playing video games, playing sports, going to the bar, everything in moderation, obviously, but a good mix is great. I myself started taking up a new hobby, and you guessed it, it's making these videos. These videos are something to help me feel like I have some control in my life, that I have some say in what my path leads for me. Also an excuse so my mom can see my face more often. I love you, Mom. But once again, guys, thank you all for watching. These videos are becoming a big part of my day-to-day, maybe even be my whole personality. But in all seriousness, it really helps out a lot by hitting that like button, sharing to a couple friends, share to one friend. I had a pretty good turnout on the last video. If everyone shares this video to one friend, I might have to do a little celebration dance. But once again, thank you guys all so much for showing up. Please do me a favor, hit that like and subscribe button. Go down to the comments. Tell me your worst experience with one of these people. We all know some of these people, or just your worst work experience in general. Once again, thank you guys so much. Keep an eye out for my next video. Shouldn't be too long, and we'll see you next time. Bye. But people too do tend to, that's what I meant to say the whole time. But people too, fuck me.